The sun hung low over the hidden leaf village, casting long shadows across the training grounds where Naruto Uzumaki sparred relentlessly with his shadow clones. Sweat glistened on his forehead as he weaved hand signs with practiced precision, his orange jumpsuit a blur of motion. Wind style, Rasengan, he shouted, slamming the spiraling sphere of chakra into a dummy, reducing it to splinters. His chest heaved with exertion, but his blue eyes burned with determination. Despite mastering Sage Mode and the Nine Tails power, Naruto still felt the weight of his father's legacy, Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage, whose legendary Flying Thunder God technique remained beyond his grasp. A rustle in the trees snapped Naruto's attention upward. A scroll, its edges frayed with age, tumbled from the branches, landing at his feet. The seal on it bore the unmistakable swirl of the Uzumaki clan, but what caught his breath was the secondary insignia, the Flying Thunder God's formula. No way. Naruto muttered, snatching it up. This was his father's work. Had someone hidden it here? Before he could unravel it, a kunai whistled past his ear, embedding itself into a tree. Hand over the scroll, Uzumaki, a voice echoed, dripping with cold authority. From the shadows emerged a figure clad in a black cloak, his face obscured by a porcelain mask etched with the markings of a Hokage's hat, but twisted, as if corrupted. The air around him thrummed with oppressive chakra, and Naruto's instinct screamed danger. Who the hell are you? Naruto demanded, tightening his grip on the scroll. The Shadow Hokage, the man replied, his voice hollow. And that scroll doesn't belong to you. Without warning, he vanished, only to reappear inches from Naruto's face, a glowing violet chakra blade materializing in his hand. Naruto barely dodged, the blade grazing his cheek as he flipped backward, landing in a defensive stance. This guy was fast, unnaturally fast. The Shadow Hokage didn't relent. His hands blurred through signs, and the ground beneath Naruto erupted in dark tendrils of chakra, snaking toward his limbs. Shadow style, binding chains. Naruto gritted his teeth, flooding his body with Kurama's chakra. Golden flames erupted around him, vaporizing the chains, but the Shadow Hokage was already upon him again, driving a knee into his gut. The impact sent Naruto skidding across the dirt, his ribs screaming in protest. He coughed, wiping blood from his lip. This wasn't just speed, this was like fighting his dad's ghost. The Shadow Hokage moved with the same teleportation precision as the Flying Thunder God, but his techniques were darker, more aggressive. Naruto couldn't afford to hold back. All right, bastard, he growled, slamming his palms together. Let's see how you handle this. Sage Mode. Natural energy surged into him, his eyes morphing into golden slits as crimson markings etched across his face. The Shadow Hokage tilted his head, amused. Interesting. But not enough. He lunged, his chakra blade elongating into a whip of violet energy. Naruto dodged, countering with a Rasen Shuriken, the whirling disk of wind screeching through the air. The Shadow Hokage flickered away, reappearing behind Naruto, only for Naruto to smirk. Gotcha. The Rasen Shuriken curved mid-air, homing in. The explosion shook the training ground, dust billowing in a massive cloud. But when it cleared, the Shadow Hokage stood unharmed, his cloak fluttering. A barrier of black chakra dissipated around him. Cute trick, he mused. But you're still green. He raised a hand, and the ground beneath Naruto turned liquid, dragging him downward. Shadow style, Abyss Grasp. Naruto roared, unleashing a burst of Kurama's chakra to break free, but the Shadow Hokage was already weaving another jutsu. The sky darkened as ink-black raindrops began to fall, each one sizzling where it touched, eating away at Naruto's cloak. Poison? No, corrosion chakra. Desperation fueled Naruto's next move. He bit his thumb, slamming it onto the ground. Summoning jutsu. In a puff of smoke, Gamakichi appeared, his massive form towering over the battlefield. Whoa, what's the toad's eyes widened as the Shadow Hokage's blade came screaming toward him. Naruto intercepted with a Rasengan, the clash sending shockwaves through the air. We gotta retreat, Gamakichi, he yelled. The toad didn't argue, leaping skyward just as the Shadow Hokage's attack split the earth where they'd stood. As they vanished into the distance, the masked figure lowered his blade, watching them go. Run all you want, Naruto Uzumaki, he murmured. That scroll will be mine. And with it, the leaf's downfall. Naruto clutched the scroll tighter, his mind racing. Who was this Shadow Hokage? How did he know the Flying Thunder God? And why was he after his father's legacy? One thing was certain, this wasn't just a fight for a scroll. This was a battle for the soul of the hidden leaf itself. Naruto's fingers clenched around the weathered scroll, its edges crackling with residual chakra as he stared at the unfamiliar seal. The Hiraishin technique, Minato's legacy, was within his grasp, but the weight of discovery vanished as a shadowy figure materialized from the trees, landing silently before him. The man's cloak billowed, revealing a mask etched with the faintest hint of a smirk. "Shadow Hokage," Naruto muttered, his muscles tensing. The battle erupted without warning. The Shadow Hokage blurred forward, a kunai flashing toward Naruto's throat. Instinct kicked in, Naruto twisted, the blade grazing his cheek as he retaliated with a spinning kick. His opponent vanished, reappearing behind him with a palm thrust aimed at his spine. Naruto barely dodged, rolling as the ground shattered where he'd stood. "Fast," he growled, wiping blood from his cheek. Sage mode surged through him, his senses expanding. The Shadow Hokage's movements became clearer, predictable, but still deadly. Naruto lunged, Rasengan humming in his palm. The enemy countered with a kunai, deflecting the sphere before flipping backward, hands weaving signs. Futon, Repushu. A gale force wind sliced through the clearing, forcing Naruto to dig his heels in, his cloak tearing. He wasn't alone. Sasuke's Sharingan flared as he descended, Chidori screeching. The Shadow Hokage pivoted, avoiding the lethal strike, but Sasuke's knee slammed into his ribs, sending him skidding. "Took you long enough," Naruto grinned. Sasuke scoffed. "Quit complaining." Their opponent rose, cracking his neck. Interesting. His chakra spiked, dark, suffocating. The ground trembled as ink-black tendrils erupted, lashing like vipers. Naruto and Sasuke leapt apart, the tendrils splitting trees like kindling. "He's adapting," Sasuke observed, his Rinnegan spinning. Naruto nodded, forming shadow clones. "Then we push harder." The clones charged, Rasengans blazing, but the Shadow Hokage weaved through them effortlessly, dismantling each with precise strikes. One clone fainted, Naruto's real body shot from above, Kurama's chakra flaring. By Judama Rasengan. The explosion rocked the battlefield, smoke choking the air. Yet, when it cleared, the enemy stood unscathed behind a shimmering barrier. "Pathetic," he taunted. Sasuke's Amaterasu ignited, black flames swallowing the shield. The Shadow Hokage staggered, his mask cracking, revealing a glimpse of scarred flesh. His eyes narrowed. Enough games. The world twisted. Space itself warped as a colossal Susanoo clad in violet armor materialized, its sword cleaving the earth. Naruto barely dodged, Kurama's full form erupting in response. The two titans clashed, shockwaves ripping through the forest. Sasuke's perfect Susanoo joined, their combined assault forcing the enemy back. But the Shadow Hokage wasn't finished. His hands moved, a forbidden seal. The sky darkened as a monstrous summon, a serpent with 6 crimson eyes, coiled around him. "You've forced my hand," he hissed. Naruto and Sasuke exchanged glances. No words were needed. Their chakra intertwined, Indra and Asura's power merging. A radiant aura enveloped them as they charged, Naruto's fist glowing with the sun's fury, Sasuke's blade humming with lightning. The serpent struck, fangs dripping venom, but they moved as one. Naruto's punch shattered its skull. Sasuke's sword pierced the Shadow Hokage's chest. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then, the enemy laughed. Blood dripped from his lips as his body began dissolving into shadow. "This isn't over," he whispered before vanishing. Naruto panted, Kurama's chakra receding. What the hell was that? Sasuke wiped his blade, frowning. A warning. The scroll lay forgotten between them, its secrets now secondary. Something far worse was coming. And they had to be ready. The air crackled with tension as Naruto stood atop the shattered remnants of the Hidden Leaf's training grounds, his breath ragged, his fingers tightening around the Hiraishin scroll. Across from him, the Shadow Hokage, cloaked in swirling darkness, grinned, his crimson eyes gleaming with malice. "You've come far, Naruto Uzumaki," he taunted, his voice dripping with condescension, "but this ends here." Naruto's muscles burned, his chakra reserves nearly depleted from their earlier clashes. Yet, his resolve blazed brighter than ever. He could feel the weight of the scroll in his hand, its secrets humming with untapped power. If I can just... Before he could finish the thought, the Shadow Hokage lunged, his form dissolving into a blur of shadows. Naruto barely dodged, the enemy's kunai grazing his cheek as he twisted midair, retaliating with a Rasengan that carved a crater into the earth. The battle was a storm of speed and fury. The Shadow Hokage's movements were unpredictable, his body flickering between solid and shadow, making him nearly untouchable. Naruto gritted his teeth, his mind racing. He's using some kind of space-time jutsu, just like Minato's. But twisted. The realization hit him like a lightning bolt, the scroll wasn't just a weapon. It was the key to countering his foe's techniques. With a burst of determination, Naruto channeled his remaining chakra into the scroll, its seals flaring to life. Golden light erupted around him as space itself seemed to warp. The Shadow Hokage's eyes widened in shock as Naruto vanished, only to reappear inches from his face, a Rasen shuriken already spinning in his palm. "This is for everyone you've hurt," Naruto roared, slamming the attack home. The explosion of wind and light sent shockwaves across the battlefield. The Shadow Hokage screamed as his body was torn apart, his dark chakra dissolving like smoke in the wind. For a heartbeat, silence fell. Then, the ground trembled as the remnants of the enemy's power collapsed in on itself, leaving only an eerie calm. Naruto collapsed to his knees, his body screaming in protest. He'd pushed himself beyond his limits, but it was over. The scroll lay beside him, its glow fading. Footsteps approached, Sasuke, Kakashi, and Sakura rushing to his side. "You did it," Sasuke said quietly, his usual stoicism softened by relief. But as Naruto looked around at the devastation, he knew this victory had changed everything. The Hiraishin's secrets were now his to master, and the Shadow Hokage's defeat had exposed a hidden network of rogue shinobi operating in the shadows. The balance of power had shifted. Kakashi placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder. "This isn't just an ending," he said, his eye crinkling with pride. "It's a new beginning." Naruto smiled weakly, his heart swelling with the knowledge that their fight had altered the future. The path ahead was uncertain, but with his friends beside him, he was ready to face whatever came next.